Hey guys, yeah, the cherry blossom's still flowering. That's 4 months that's been flowering for. It's really weird. 4 degrees out there today. A little bit of snow just starting to fall. So we might do our video inside today. A little bit too chilly to be out there. So I've been sent this from a few different people. This poster that there was a Subaru event and it was promoted that you could come to the event and that professional rally car drivers would drive you around in a Subaru rally car. So it was a really popular event. Lots of people went, including a lot of non-Japanese people who were disappointed to see this poster. So just to save you guys that are struggling to read it, attention foreign residents. We apologise, but participation is limited to Japanese nationals only. Sorry you cannot ride in the Subaru cars. And then very patronisingly at the bottom, please feel free to walk around, take photos of cars, visit the booths and have a coffee or some hot soup in our Subaru cafe. You could even win a prize, right? Which obviously someone thought writing that at the bottom was going to make the foreigners feel better, which it didn't. So it's all over the internet at the moment. Some people are really pissed off about it. So which you can understand their point of view if they've travelled to this event to do this thing. The promotions that Subaru did for this thing online just said come and ride in the car. It didn't say anything about Japanese only or anything else. So since this is blowing up on the internet, Subaru has released a statement and they said the damage control, basically you could see it was damage control, and apparently what triggered it was they had a waiver that people had to sign before they could go in the cars. It's a liability waiver, right? So that if you die in the car, you're not going to sue Subaru, right? And they only had the waiver in Japanese. Now, you know, it's fair enough because it is in Japan, right? We are in Japan, so if the waiver's only in Japanese, that's fair enough. But obviously, a lot of the people that went were Subaru enthusiasts and Subaru owners. Many of them owned Subarus and were, you know, good Subaru customers. In fact, Subaru sells obviously way more Subarus overseas for foreigners than they actually sell in Japan. So the foreigners are absolutely essential to Subaru's success, right? So it would have been really wise for them to, I mean, interestingly, they managed to put English and Chinese and Korean on that notice telling us that they wouldn't accept foreigners, but they didn't manage to put the waiver in other languages. So obviously for what is supposed to be an international company, it would have been wise for them to turn up with a bunch of waivers in different languages, wouldn't it? I mean, it's not difficult to do. Subaru has full-time translators working for them, so it wouldn't have been a difficult thing to organise. And then having not done that, this was not the way to deal with it, was it? So not good. They've upset a lot of people. There'll be a lot of people that maybe would have bought a Subaru or have bought Subarus in the past that won't buy Subarus in the future because of this. They've taken offence to it. So I don't know, guys. I was asked to give my opinion on this. I've been addressing this on YouTube for the last 15 years because this is a fairly common event. You know, we get sent stuff like that all the time, and stuff like that blows up on the internet all the time because, you know, people will post a photo of a restaurant that says no foreigners. You know, and again, they'll quite often have the notice in 3 or 4 languages, no foreigners, right? They'll have it in English and Chinese and Korean and Filipino and interestingly, they can do that, but they don't want the foreigners in their shop. So I've been asked my opinion on this. Well, I've always had the attitude that business owners have a right to choose who they do business with, who they accept as customers from their point of view. Okay, so let's look at their point of view first. that it's their business. They own that restaurant. We'll talk about this. This Subaru thing's a little bit more of an unusual event. But if we look, the most common event is restaurants and bars. That's the most common one that people come up against, is where there's a sign on the door that says, "I'm sorry, no foreigners." It depends, different levels of politeness. Sometimes it just says no foreigners. Sometimes it says, "Very, very sorry, we can't accept foreign customers." But, it's their premises. And if they want to control who goes in there and who doesn't, it would seem that that's a reasonable thing for them to do. Obviously, it's, some other people could say it's bigoted, but if we can just look at it from their point of view first, it's their place. They have a right to do that. Some of you might have seen the video that we posted recently from Guzai Show. We went to Guzai Show for the day, and up on the top of that mountain there's a restaurant, and we were sitting in that restaurant, quietly in the corner, quietly eating our lunch, and in walked this lady, sort of middle-aged lady, on the phone, and she wasn't Japanese. It's irrelevant what country she came from, what language she was speaking, but she wandered into the restaurant, and one of her friends was obviously on the mountain there somewhere, and she was walking in the restaurant talking really loudly on the phone, really, really loudly on the phone as she walked into the restaurant. Walked in the restaurant talking really loudly on the phone, and then sat down at the table and continued talking really loudly on the phone. And you could see Japanese people sort of glancing over at this loud voice, and because it's always worse when it's another language, because it stands out even more than if it was in Japanese, and that sort of behaviour is sort of not usually done here. And this is the problem. This is the problem that Japanese businesses and Japanese people usually expect everybody to behave the same. They expect all Japanese people to behave the same. This is how we do it here. We've talked about this on previous videos. Manner, manner, they talk about manner, and that means the way that everything's done. So they've ironically, they've adopted the English word manner recently when they talk about this, but they'll talk about manner, and they'll have signs up in parks and in shops and in restaurants and in bars with manner, and basically the rules. And you'll see it on Japanese websites as well, the rules, and Japanese people are always keen to know the rules so that they don't break the rules, and so that they're doing the correct behaviours. That's the Japanese thinking, right? Whereas, some people from other countries don't want to know that. So when you've got that in mind, if someone walks into a bar or restaurant or somewhere else and is sort of not behaving in the way that they're supposed to be behaving, that can upset the staff and the owner of the business, but also it can upset the Japanese customers, because they don't want that behaviour going on either. Can you hear the announcement? Big Brother. The emergency address system's used to talk about all sorts of things that aren't emergencies. We've talked about that. We've showed you that before. So you can see from their point of view, it's just easier. It's just easier for them not to deal with the foreigners. We're planning a trip to Hokkaido in May, maybe. And so I've been doing a lot of research and sending a lot of emails to a lot of businesses. And I've been sending them in English and Japanese. I send a lot in English to see what result I get, because for our English-friendly directory, we like to collect businesses that are genuinely English-friendly. So if we find a website that has an English page on it, I'll often send email in English just to see what happens. If they have no English on the directory, usually I'll just send a Japanese one. But interestingly, often there's no response. And even to the emails I send in Japanese, and I suspect it's my name is the problem. Quite often on the Japanese websites, they have a form you've got to fill out if you want to ask a question. And usually it's quite unnecessarily involved how much information you have to give just to ask a question. And of course you've got to give your name. And I think, I suspect that that's quite often the case with these companies. It's just too difficult for them to deal with foreigners. It's not just the language thing. I mean, I often send things in Japanese and still don't get an answer. So it's not just the language thing. It's just dealing with foreigners is too hard for them. Japanese customers are much easier to deal with because they all behave the correct way. They always all do what they're supposed to do. They all want to know the rules and want to follow the rules. Whereas a lot of foreign people, Not all of us. Some of us try and follow the rules too, but there's a lot of foreign people who don't and just break the rules, like the lady in the restaurant talking loudly on the phone, you know, and disrupting the other customers. So for a lot of these businesses, it's just easier for them just not to deal with us. And that seems to have been the way Subaru's handled this problem. Instead of saying, oh, we haven't got a waiver, we've only got waivers in Japanese, we need waivers in other languages, quick, get on the phone to the head office and get the translators to write up some waivers for us. Instead of doing that, they did this. You know, they printed that notice in other languages saying we can't accept foreigners, which was obviously a big mistake that they're regretting now. So, but from the customers' point, from the Japanese business people's point of view, you can see their point of view, can't you? That it's just easier for them not to deal with us, you know, and that's why they don't answer my emails quite often. While I'm on that too, by the way, the ones who do answer the emails, and so when I send the ones in English, that's a bit of a check to see if we get a response. If we get a response in English, it tells us two things. It tells us, one, that they're English friendly, which quite often my response to that will be to put them on the English friendly directory. Oh, here's someone that'll deal with us, put on the English friendly directory. And the second thing it tells us is that they're reasonably foreigner friendly, because if they're responding to the email, then obviously they're interested in foreign customers. Which leads me to the next point. We've looked at this situation from the business owners, the Japanese business owners' point of view, and why they don't want to deal with foreigners. Now we look at what we can do about it, and because complaining and protesting, if you want to complain and protest about this and carry on about it, then by all means you have a right to do that. My perspective on that would be that it would be a waste of time, that it's not going to make any difference, that foreigners complaining or protesting about unfair treatment isn't going to fix it, because that's not how Japanese people react to stuff. That if we do that, they're going to think that further proves the point, right? If they hear foreigners complaining and protesting, they go, oh, well, there you go. That's why we don't want to deal with them. That's what they do, right? If you want to complain and protest, of course, you're entitled to do that. But my perspective is waste of time. My perspective is, and the first time I mentioned this in a video was like 15 years ago, we should vote with our wallets. And that's one of the things I like about the English Friendly Directory, is that I can steer customers to the businesses that do want to do business with us. The businesses, because quite often what you have is, quite often Japanese companies will have an English page on their website, but then when you contact them, they don't answer, or if you call them, they don't answer, and they're not really interested. So at some stage, some boss has decided they need to have an English page, but the reality is that the management and staff don't really want foreigners, right? And those are the ones that won't answer. So an English page on their website doesn't necessarily mean they're English friendly, and it doesn't necessarily mean they're foreigner friendly. Whereas the ones that we send emails to, that we get responses from, who are helpful and obviously keen for us to come, and the differences, you know, this last week I've sent out lots of emails to all sorts of places in Hokkaido about all sorts of activities and accommodation and things. And the difference, some of them there's just no answer at all, and I actually have a file for them, put them in the file that don't answer, and then the ones that answer really enthusiastically, oh, it'd be wonderful to have you here, thanks so much for your, they're the ones. That's the ones we want. They're English friendly and they're foreigner friendly. Vote with your wallet and give them your money. You know, that's my thinking. That's my thinking. The ones that don't want to do business with us, okay. You know, I won't buy a Subaru. You know, I won't stay in that hotel. I won't rent that camper van. I won't go to that place. If they don't answer my emails, I won't go there. Right? If I send an email in English and they answer in English and they're friendly and enthusiastic and welcoming, I'll go there and spend my money there. And that'd be my suggestion. You know, those people, the more common than the Subaru ones, the restaurants and the bars, just don't go there. I mean, if I'm not wanted, if they don't want me in their restaurant or bar, I'm not going to go in there. You know, I've seen people have sent me videos of foreigners that see a sign like that and then walk in there with their camera. And I'm going to go in there and, you know, see what they say. Well, of course they're going to say, sorry, we said on the door, no foreigners, don't come in here. That's their right. And who wants to go in there anyway? If the owners of the place don't want you in there, and the other customers don't want you in there, why would you go in there? Right? So different people have different approaches on this sort of stuff. My attitude is, why fight it? There's other restaurants and bars. Go to another one where you are welcome. You know? So, you know, go where you're welcome. Spend the money where you want to. You know, the ones that welcome us, give them our money. That's my thinking. You know, they get our money, and the ones that don't welcome us and don't treat us well, they don't get the money. You know, because the tourism market in Japan is really big. Some business owners don't want to be involved in it. They don't want a part of it, so that's fair enough. So I covered everything. Restaurants, yes. Yeah, the lady in the restaurant speaking loudly. I mean, we've seen loads of them over the years. Loads of them. Some stuff like, the one that just came to mind was one in Kyoto I saw, I don't know, 20 years ago, 25 years ago. I was in Kyoto and I was in a restaurant. And everybody's eating, and there was this lovely music playing, and as everybody's eating, some of you might have heard this story already, and it was just lovely atmosphere. You know, morning breakfast in a hotel can be a wonderful thing, you know, eating breakfast and the tinkle of the cutlery. And then there's this huge snort of some dude blowing his nose really, really loudly. And everything just stopped. Everybody just froze. And Japanese people are really polite, so nobody sort of looked around. They all sort of just froze for a moment, you know. But I looked around. I looked over, and there was this big dude sitting over there on his own. And then everybody went back to eating again. And after they'd recovered from the shock, they went back to eating again. And then a few seconds later, he did it again. They froze again because, you know, most of you guys know, you know, blowing your nose in public in Japan isn't really cool, and doing it in the middle of a restaurant while people are eating is just, you know, from their point of view, is just terrible. So that restaurant didn't want any more foreigners after that. Yeah, vote with your wallet. So yeah, that's the key, guys. Vote. That's my suggestion. Those who haven't checked out the English Friendly Directory, check it out. You know, anybody, any business that's on there, any bar or restaurant or anything else that's on there, you know, they're English friendly. That's why they're on there. But also they're foreigner friendly. Because if they're not, if they don't answer our emails, if they don't talk to us, and they don't make us feel welcome, we don't put them on there. We've removed ones in the past where people have said to us. That they've sent emails to one of the people on there, one of the businesses on there, and they haven't answered. We've removed them. A lot of those businesses on there pay, or some percentage of those businesses on there pay $100 a year to be on there. And it's only happened a couple of times, but when it's happened, people have said, oh, we sent emails, they didn't answer, or they weren't helpful or something. We've removed them and refunded their $100. Just send their money back to them and say, sorry, you're not welcome on there anymore. Because, you know, so that's our thinking. That's our thinking, is just adapt. It's the Aikido way of thinking, guys. This is the way Aikido works, is you don't push back. You just step around it, right? So if they don't want our business, if they don't want us in their premises, we don't go in, we go somewhere else. Because really, guys, the protesting and complaining and carrying on about it just makes it worse, because that's not the way they deal with it. The way Japanese people do it, the reason that the quality of food and service in Japan is so high is not because Japanese people complain if it's not. Usually what they'll do is just not go there again. So they'll quietly just not go there again. So if you did have a restaurant or a cafe or a bar or somewhere in Japan where the service wasn't good or where the food wasn't good, the customers might go there once and then they wouldn't go there again. And usually they wouldn't complain. Sometimes Japanese people complain, but usually they won't. They'll just won't go there again. They vote with their wallet, which to me is the best solution. If you're not happy with the way you're being treated or the quality of the service or anything else, just don't go there again. You know, go somewhere else. So yeah, those who haven't checked out the English Friendly Directory, check it out, because if you go to any of those places, I promise you'll be treated well, and you won't have these problems. And if you want to buy a Subaru or don't want to buy a Subaru, that's up to you. Vote with your wallet. Anyway, that's enough of that. More videos coming soon.